Finding of God. I am an old man now. My hair is gray and my face has many lines. But I remember my teenage years very well. When I was young, full of energy and big dreams, I believed I could control everything in my life. I did not believe in God, and I never prayed. I thought I don't need anyone. I can do it all alone. I was proud of my strength and hard work. When I started my first job, I worked harder than anyone else. I woke up early and came home late. My goal was to become rich and successful, but life was not easy. My boss was unkind and the pay was low. Every day, I told myself, keep working, things will get better. But they didn't. After saving some money, I decided to open my own shop. I dreamed of being my own boss and making a good life. I worked day and night, saving every coin. After many years of hard work, I opened a small shop. I sold fruits and vegetables, and people in the village liked it. For a while, I was happy. I felt proud of what I had built. Customers came every day, and I thought my life was finally on the right path. But one night, everything changed. A fire started in the market. The flames spread quickly, and my shop burned to the ground. I stood there watching the fire destroy everything I had worked for. The smoke filled the air, and people shouted and ran. I couldn't move. My heart felt heavy, and my dream was gone in minutes. I went home with empty hands and an empty heart. The next day, my friends came to see me. They tried to comfort me. One of them said, "You should pray to God. He will help you." I laughed bitterly and said, "Pray. Where was God last night? He didn't stop the fire. Why should I pray now?" I tried to move on. I found another job and worked even harder, but life seemed to fight me at every turn. I lost my savings, and I felt more alone than ever. No matter how hard I tried, nothing went right. One evening, I sat by the window in my small, dark room. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and red. I looked at the horizon and asked myself, why is my life like this? Why do I feel so empty? For the first time in my life, I felt weak and small. I had always thought I was strong and could handle anything, but at that moment I realized I needed something more. I didn't know what it was, but I felt the emptiness deep in my soul. Days passed, but the feeling of emptiness stayed. I worked hard, but my heart wasn't in it. One day an old man came to my workplace. His face was kind, and his eyes were full of wisdom. He bought a few things and then stopped to talk to me. "You look tired, young man," he said. I nodded. "Life is not easy," I replied. He smiled softly and said, "Sometimes we need help to carry our burdens." I didn't say anything, but his words stayed in my mind. That evening, I sat alone again. I remembered the old man's words. I thought about my life and all the times I had struggled. My pride had always stopped me from asking for help, but now I felt too tired to carry everything alone. I didn't know how to pray, but I decided to try. I closed my eyes and whispered, "God, if you are there, please help me. I don't know what to do anymore." My words were simple, but they came from my heart. Nothing happened that night. There was no loud voice or miracle. But the next morning, I felt different. It was a small change, but it was there. I felt a tiny spark of hope. For the first time in years, I didn't feel completely alone. That day, the old man came back to my workplace. He smiled and asked, "How are you today?" I told him, "I feel a little better." He nodded and said, "Sometimes when we open our hearts, the light can come in." I didn't understand his words, but they gave me comfort. Over the next few weeks, I tried to pray every night. My prayers were not long or fancy. I just talked about my day and my worries. It felt strange at first, but slowly it became a habit. I started to feel lighter, as if I wasn't carrying all my problems alone. One evening, I decided to visit a small church in the village. I had never been there before. The building was old, but it felt peaceful. I sat in the back and looked around. A few people were there praying quietly. I didn't know what to do, so I just closed my eyes. For the first time, I felt a sense of calm. It wasn't a big moment, but it was enough. I realized that maybe I wasn't alone after all. The weeks went by, and I kept visiting the small church. It became my quiet place where I could sit and think. One evening, the old man from my workplace was there. He saw me and sat beside me. "I'm glad you came," he said. "This place feels peaceful," I replied. He nodded and spoke. "Peace comes when we let go of the things we cannot control." His words made me think about my life. I had spent so much time trying to fix everything by myself. That night, I prayed again. I didn't ask for anything big. I just said thank you for today. It was a small prayer, but it felt right. I began to notice little changes in my life. My days felt less heavy, and I started to smile more. One day I saw a man in the village struggling to carry a heavy bag. I ran to help him. He smiled and said, "Thank you, young man. You are very kind." His words warmed my heart. I realized that helping others gave me a sense of purpose. I started looking for ways to be kind to others at work. I'll listen when people share their troubles. In the village, I helped neighbors with small tasks. Each act of kindness made me feel closer to something greater than myself. One evening, the old man gave me a book. It was worn and old, with golden letters on the cover. "This might help you," he said. I took the book home and opened it. It was full of stories and teachings about faith and love. I began reading a little each night. Some parts were hard to understand, but others spoke to me deeply. The words felt like they were written just for me. They reminded me to be patient, to forgive, and to trust in something bigger than my fears. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of hope. Problems didn't disappear, but they felt smaller. I started to believe that I could face them one step at a time. The old man saw the changes in me. "You're different now," he said one day. "There's light in your eyes." I smiled and spoke. "I feel different for the first time. I feel like I'm not alone." One evening, the old man invited me to join him for a walk in the village. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. As we walked, he talked about his life. He told me how he had been lost once, too, but found peace through faith. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Just trust and keep going." Life isn't about getting everything right, but about learning to love, forgive, and grow. His words made me think deeply. The more I listened, the more I understood. I had spent so many years trying to fix everything alone, but now I was learning that it wasn't just about fixing things. It was about accepting life with all its messiness and trusting that something greater would guide me. That night, I prayed again. I didn't ask for anything special. I simply said, "Please help me find the strength to keep moving forward." It felt good to let go of my fears and trust in something beyond my understanding. In the weeks that followed, I noticed even more changes in my life. I became more patient with others. I began to feel less anxious and more at peace. My relationships improved, and I felt less burdened by my worries. One day, I saw a neighbor struggling to carry groceries. I ran to help her, and she thanked me with a smile. I realized that these small acts of kindness were part of the journey. They were the way I could share the peace I was beginning to feel. The old man noticed these changes too. "You are becoming the person you were meant to be," he said with a smile. "Just keep trusting." His words filled me with warmth. I began to see that life wasn't about running away from my problems, but about facing them with faith and love. I began to feel connected to something bigger than myself. I was no longer afraid of the future. I knew that with faith, I could handle whatever came my way. That night, as I prayed, I thanked God for the peace that had begun to fill my heart. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt ready to face it. As the months passed, my life continued to change in ways I never expected. I began to attend the small church in the village more regularly. At first, I just sat quietly listening to the preacher, but slowly I started to understand the messages. They were simple, but they spoke to my heart. One Sunday, the preacher spoke about forgiveness. He said that holding on to anger and bitterness was like carrying a heavy burden. Forgiveness, he said, is not for the other person. It's for you. It frees you from the past. Those words stayed with me for days. I thought about all the anger I had carried in my heart for so long. I thought about the people I had blamed and the mistakes I had made. It was time to let go. That evening I sat down and thought about my past. I remembered the pain, but I also remembered the good times. I realized that my life had been shaped by both. I couldn't change the past, but I could change how I carried it with me. I began to forgive, starting with myself. I let go of the guilt and shame I had been holding on to for years. I also forgave those who had hurt me. It wasn't easy, but it was freeing. I felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The changes in me didn't go unnoticed. People in the village began to see something different in me. I was no longer the angry man I once was. I was more patient, more understanding. I smiled more and I listened better. One day the old man came to see me again. He smiled when he saw the changes in me. "You're on the right path," he said. "Faith is not just about believing in something bigger than yourself. It's also about believing in yourself." His words filled me with hope. I knew I had a way to go, but I was no longer afraid. I had found something I never thought I would: peace. That night, I prayed again. I thanked God for the strength to forgive and for the peace that had come into my life. I was no longer searching for answers. I had found them. As time went on, my life became more peaceful. I no longer carried the anger that had once weighed me down. I started to see the world differently. The small things in life, like the sound of birds singing or the warmth of the sun, became a reminder of the good in the world. One day, while walking through the village, I saw the young man who had once been my closest friend. He had been the cause of my pain, the one who had hurt me deeply. But now, as I looked at him, I felt no anger. Instead, I felt sympathy. He looked tired, and there was sadness in his eyes. I walked up to him, and we spoke. He apologized for the past, for the hurt he had caused me. I told him that I had already forgiven him, that I had found peace. We sat together for a while talking about the old days, and I realized that in that moment I had truly let go of the past. As the years passed, I continued to grow in my faith. I became more involved in the church, helping others who were struggling with the same anger and pain I had once carried. I shared my story with them, telling them how forgiveness had brought me peace. My life was not perfect, but I had found something I had been searching for all along, a sense of purpose. I knew that I had been given a second chance, and I was determined to live it with kindness, understanding, and love. One evening, as I sat in my small house, I looked out the window and thought about all the changes that had happened. I had gone from a man who didn't believe in God to someone who now saw his presence in every part of life. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had found my way and I was at peace. I knew that I still had a long journey ahead, but I was no longer walking alone. It's a good way to practice English every day. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories.